Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. This week, I'm speaking with Deborah Brenner, social entrepreneur, founder, and CEO of Women of the Vine and Spirits and Diverse Powered Brands. Deborah spent 20 years in TV and technology, and on a road trip to Napa and Sonoma, she became enamored with the women winemakers excelling in a male-dominated field. She was so taken by their stories, she wrote a book about them called Women of the Vine, Inside the World of Women Who Make, Taste, and Enjoy Wine, which is a Wine Spectator critical read. Little did she know it would become the precursor to her two organizations she has today. Deborah launched the Women of the Vine and Spirits Foundation in 2017 to further foster education and increase pathways for more women to enter or excel in the industry. Launched in 2023, Diverse Powered Brands is the premier centralized B2B global marketplace connecting diverse-owned, diverse-led, and diverse-made brands to buyers, wholesalers, and supplier diversity managers across the beverage, alcohol, and hospitality industry. I am so thankful for Deborah's contribution to women and our DEI initiatives for our industry. It's amazing what one person in a room can do for so many people. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Welcome, everybody, to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, and I am super excited. I have Deborah Brenner here from Women of the Vine. How are you, Deborah?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessie, for inviting me here.
Oh, it's such an honor for you to be able to take the time to sit down with me and talk about what you're doing. You've had a very busy year, and I can't wait to get into it. But congratulations. That's very exciting. I'm super excited for you and your team.
Thank you. Yes, it has been busy, and I can't believe we're going into 2024 very shortly.
I know. This year went so fast. It was such a big transition year. So, where are you calling from today?
So I'm actually just about 15 miles north of New York City. For anybody that knows, if you follow up the Hudson River, you would be in like Piermont, Nyack by the bridge area. That's where I reside.
Nice.
Working in my home office.
It's a pretty area of the world.
Absolutely. And close to New York City, but outside enough to be in nature, which is what I definitely need.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds that way. I lived in Queens, and I love the city, and I miss it all the time, and I just don't get a chance to get up there. So, being so close, you get that opportunity pretty easily and often, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely. No, it's been a great home base for me.
So does your team, do you guys have an office, or are y'all kind of home based?
You know, it's so interesting because we have been remote since I started Women of the Vine and Spirits in 2015. So the team is everywhere. We have from Washington State to California, New York, Florida, North Carolina, New Jersey. So
Nice.
we're using Zoom since 2015. So yeah, we've been a real remote company all along, and it's actually worked out really well for us because our members are everywhere.
Yeah, that is really cool. So you were an early adopter.
Absolutely. So when the pandemic hit and everybody was pivoting to go online, fortunately we had already been doing so many of our programming for Women of the Vine and Spirits online already, so we were able to mobilize very quickly as a group and to support our community. So we're very grateful for that. And the technology, I mean, it was, I don't know what we would have done without it. I actually worked in the tech industry before I came into Bev Alc, so I'm a techie at heart.
Oh, okay. I can't wait to dig into that. So, so where are you originally from?
So born in the Bronx, where my parents grew up and grandparents.
Okay.
And then at a very early age, they moved out, like many did, into more of the suburbs of New York City and grew up in Rockland County. And yeah, so I'm born and bred in New York, but I had the fortunate opportunity to work and travel in my early career, in my technology career.
Okay, so how did you get involved in technology?
My dad was in IT. He was in the Air Force, and he got involved in information technology very early on. I mean, showing my age and his, he was doing punch cards at the time. So I think I got the bug from him. And when I came out of college, I went to University of Delaware, and I got hired at a TV station, and then hired for a tech company that was making equipment for television and film studios. So this was, the early 1990s, and I was working in high definition television
No
back
way.
then. Most people didn't even hear about it. So it was
Yeah.
like being a kid in a candy store. Oh my God.
Cutting
I
edge.
was seeing stuff that, yeah, I mean, it was light years ahead. I was working on what's today is the, DVRs. We were working on that technology in the mid 90s. So it wasn't even, available in the household. So yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a great career, worked for great people, but um, it was a very male dominated industry. And as I started getting older in the ranks, I just never felt I could fully thrive in the industry. So that was a big reason why I, started to pursue my passion, which was in agriculture and farming and wine. And that's what led me to the Bev Alc industry.
That is absolutely fascinating. So I want to ask you quick, going back to your first career or the mid '90s career with HD. Who were you? I mean, were you in film? Were you in? Well, you said television. Were you in news or TV shows, or how did that?
So,
And what was the audience for the HD?
yeah, so I actually worked coming out of college. I worked for CNBC at the time and then NBC. But then I got recruited for the manufacturer that was making nonlinear linear editing equipment. It was a competitor at the time. It was the leader. There wasn't any Photoshop at the time, so they were cutting edge. They were a British company, and I was working on some of their technology in the graphics room for television, and they recruited me to work in business development, work with salespeople, and help train. So then I spent 10 years really traveling all over and internationally, where I would go into film studios and television studios as these companies were adopting this new technology. And so it was really uh, an extraordinary time being in the industry when it was cutting edge.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
being
it was a
young
lot
and traveling and seeing the world, like that's impressive. That is really,
of
really
fun.
cool.
Well, I mean, showing my age to your audience, Jesse, I mean, I'm impressed in the sense that I can't believe I was doing this without cell phones. So I was a young woman traveling, I'd have to have my AT&T card to dial, and I didn't have GPS and Google Maps. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think back now, how did I do it? But that's, we didn't know any
We
different.
didn't
But
know any
now when
different.
I travel today, it's so much easier.
Oh
But
yeah.
it was an incredible career. I loved it. And actually, I have my ex CEO to thank for my passion in wine. He was a huge wine connoisseur,
Oh
and
really?
my dad was also into wine, and but working with Richard Taylor and stuff really introduced me to some high end wine and Napa Valley and things like that. So yeah, I have him to thank for inspiring me to explore it further when I was looking to make a career change.
Were you already drinking wine and on your travels exploring different wines as you were going out to dinner in all these different countries?
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I worked for a British company, and then traveling around, I, you know, spent time internationally and domestically, and they were wining and dining clients because the equipment was going into, the Paramounts and the Warner Brothers and, NBC. I mean, it was just remarkable to be a young person and be exposed to that at a young age.
Yeah, that is
And
so cool.
yeah, I mean, I remember, like, the a lot of my British counterparts, they loved port. I had never tried port wine before. So yeah, it opened up a whole new world. And then, of course, when you travel to Europe, there'd be wine at lunch and, different things. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, now I know how I was bitten by the bug, because,
Yep.
and it was the people that you meet in this industry, right? Bev Alkis and Jesse, you get to interview, but that's the thing that got me really wanting to get into the industry was it's like people, place, and thing, right? It's history, and it's terroir, and I loved everything about it. And you know, started really looking if I could make the transition um, over to it. And actually, I was a journalist early on, and I entered the industry not by just getting a job. I actually wrote a book called Women of the Vine, and that was 20 years ago. And at that
Wow.
time, nobody was talking about women in wine. So that's how I entered the industry, right? It wasn't like somebody said, "Oh, come work for us," or I applied for a job. I just was crazy enough to want to interview like yourself, and I started reaching out to trailblazers in the industry in California, and started writing their stories, and then I got published. From there, I was like, there's no going back to my tech world. I started actually marketing and helping them sell their wine here in the New York and New Jersey area. So um, put on my sales hat, started working with wholesalers, worked on and off premise, and that was really the start of my career back in 2006, 2007, I guess.
So that is fascinating that you wrote a book on these women, that you were so intrigued with the wine industry that you were kind of having your own struggles within your own industry. And you write about the ones that are in wine, not your own, which is very interesting to me. But I guess it was probably for you to look outside to a whole new industry that you were very much intrigued with, and probably knew to some degree that was gonna, like, it was a direction you were gonna go, and that was your bridge maybe to kind of get there. And I think that's really super interesting that you were so inspired to take the time out of your everyday life to just sit and write a book and interview people, which is really really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's that, I've always been curious, why I love journalism. I've always wanted to know more. And I have the women to thank, because I couldn't believe when I was reaching out to them and I was a nobody, and they were so willing to share their stories with me and to talk with me. And I think a lot of it was that nobody ever asked them.
Yep.
20 years ago, nobody was picking up the phone and calling some of these incredible trailblazers in the industry, and here I was just reaching out to them saying, listen, I want to tell your story. I want the world to know your story. And at that time, people really weren't even looking at it. So I think for them, it was a way for them to also celebrate their own success, because nobody had really asked them. And then when you tell your story, you realize, like, wow, I can't believe I accomplished that, you
Yep.
know? And that was, I think, the most proud moment for me, and why I knew I had to continue championing the underrepresented, which 20 years later led me to start Women of the Vine and Spirits. And then recently, this April, I started a new, company with Diverse Power Brands. So I think it's always been kind of in my blood to want to put the E in equity, for diversity, equity, inclusion, just helping to level the playing field and give people an opportunity to be seen and heard.
Well, I can tell you that you are a trailblazer. You are amazing, and I think, I mean, when you look at, oh, I remember the first year. was it 2014 or 2015 was your first year, and it just blew up from the
Yeah.
word go. I mean, you sold out, right, your first year, and then it was just sort of, you just rolled with it. At that point, it became a needed piece of our industry, that it, from my point of view, for where I was at the time, it looked like the corporations really got behind you and said, yes, we need this, we need to empower these women and other diverse groups. And you're like, yes, I got you, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna roll this with this and
Yeah.
do this together.
Absolutely, Jesse. I mean, I'll be honest with you. And you interviewed Ben Salisbury. I mean, I had a conversation with Ben. He was going out, he was at Constellation at the time, and I was like, I don't know what to do, Ben. I mean, people are coming up to me because my book was called Women of the Vine, and they're like, my sister's a woman of the vine. I'm a woman of the vine. How can I be part of Women of the Vine? And it was a book. It wasn't something. And Ben really was the one who encouraged me and said, um, there was a sense that they wanted community. They needed community, and it didn't exist at the time.
Right.
And so, throwing caution to the wind, I was still working full time in sales and marketing, and started organizing with Ben's help on sponsorships and things, the first ever symposium to do this. And yes, it sold out immediately. It wasn't until the second one that I actually left my day job, because I thought maybe this would be a one-off. I didn't know if anybody'd get behind it. And so, I had to keep working in my day job while I was trying to do this. But it was remarkable, and the companies did get behind it. But I think one of the reasons why the companies got behind it so quickly was because the women in those companies were just like, wow, there's a community and a forum built for us, and we're built, and it was designed intentionally, Jesse, from the beginning, to invite and encourage all of our male allies to be a part of the discussion, not just women speaking to women, which we've done, historically forever, but to have these conversations together, celebrate together, and also tackle some difficult conversations
Mm-hmm.
about advancement, succession, sponsorship, and mentorship. And it also was really important, since I had worked in on-premise, off-premise, and, wholesale and supply, that we invited all industry sectors, because this industry with its three-tiered system and supply chain is really unique. So if we want to empower, it's kind of like the tide rises all boats. So that was really something that I think set us apart from the beginning, and what really made the companies get behind the initiative.
What part of it, um was there a moment, or was there a CEO or someone that made an impact where you thought, yeah, this is the direction that we're going to go. We just did something really great, and we got to forge on. Was there any kind of a light bulb moment, or any impactful thing that you remember on how this was like, this moment is my life has changed?
Yeah. Um, the incredible thing was being at the first conference, right? The first symposium. And you could, after being in the industry for so long, and Jesse, before we got on this, you and I were just chatting a little bit about being the only in the room,
Yep.
where for so long we would go to conferences or go to meetings, and you would be the only female in the room, or the only in the conferences, and how difficult that can be. Well, we just created a conference that flipped it on its head. And now all of a sudden, the women were the majority and the men were the minority. And I think what was so incredible was some of these senior executive men, God bless them, they were so brave to be there with me. But some of the incredible things from them were, I remember Steve Slater at the time from Southern coming up to me and saying, wow, is this how you guys feel when you come to our conferences? And I said, exactly, that's how we feel. Because he was like, wow, I stand out of the crowd. He's like, the men would have to try to find each other to huddle, to like be in good company. And that was remarkable to me. And I thought, this in itself is a teachable moment, because
Mm-hmm.
they were now in an environment in Bev Alc that they had never experienced what we have experienced. And so that, I think, was really a turning point. And it
Hmm.
also was a turning point with our speakers and our attendees and everybody that got behind it, because we realized it couldn't be a 1 year conference. When you have selling shows and other shows that you're bringing, launching new products, that's great. You could do it once a year. But the work that we're doing needed to be year round. So that summer changed my life, because after the first conference in March 2015, I spent the entire summer building out the platform, working with, uh, software and everything to create the membership organization, so that in September 2015, we actually had a global membership community that companies and individuals could join, and we could keep the dialogue going year round. That was where I think the light bulb went off, is, the work we were doing was not just an annual conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was made pretty clear. I feel like you said from the very start. You have speakers. I'm not sure, is it once a week or twice a month? You're very active
Well,
on
now we have every week we have programs going on. Yeah. And the programming is designed to really satisfy women in the wine and spirits two pillars. Our main pillar, of course, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just, always looking to have our members take off their competitive hats for the greater good of the industry, right? So we share a lot, we educate, we learn, best practices, how we could be doing things better, what can the industry be doing. And then the other pillar is business development and innovation, because we're over 11,500 strong, now in member. And
that's great.
the networking is phenomenal, and just being able to have a community where we can network and share, and that's the number one thing I think that women often lack, is to build your network,
Yep.
um, to help you in your career. And it's not about changing jobs, it's about doing your job, right? And because who allows you to have more opportunities in the job that you have. So it's not about, you should not only be networking when you're thinking about making career moves. You should be networking 24/7 to increase, your productivity and your success in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I think there's always an element of learning at all times. You can always learn, more about yourself, whether it's career wise or you want to learn a new skill, just because, or for me, that's the interesting part of life is what you can learn, and then what skills you can learn to kind of implement and see that success, which is, I think kind of along the lines of what you're, alluding to. Um,
Absolutely. And I always tell people not to underestimate the power of education, because more than knowledge, it's about gaining confidence.
mhm.
And I think especially in women, um, statistics show that women, on average, wait until they feel 90% qualified to apply for a job. And men will apply when they feel 60% qualified, because they're confident they can learn, on the job. That's a big thing that we try to get role models and really talk about, because if we're going to empower and advance all women, um, we need them to feel confident that they can learn on the job and to apply for them. And so there's lots of different nuances in the
Mm-hmm.
work that we do, everything from unconscious bias to professional and individual development to leadership, and then to never underestimate the power of role models. So we have male and female senior executives that uh, give us an hour of their time, which is like an hour of mentorship. And I think that's one of our most popular series that we do. And
Mm-hmm.
that is really encouraging people to sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone, right?
Yep.
But there's a whole reason why they call it a comfort zone because it doesn't feel very comfortable when you have to step out.
Yeah, no. Yeah, absolutely. But that's how you it's also what I've heard also about just health-wise and your brain, you need to you for longevity, you need to constantly be testing and training your brain new things because it's meant to, right? It's like when we get in these jobs and we're kind of doing the uh, you know, structured position for years and years and years, you got to get out of that wheel because you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not challenging. And, that happens also to a lot of us because it's not so easy to get a job these days. It's just kind of a weird environment. And I find too also that um, if you don't know a buyer and you're not already in some kind of like former or previous relationship with them, in terms of the sales side of our business, it's really difficult to get a job. I experienced that because I was in the military for 8 years, and I finally asked a manager. I'm like, well, what advice do you have for me? Because I'm stuck here. I know how to manage accounts and call on buyers. Like how does that work? So I hopefully with what you are doing and offering and having that connection to those CEOs and those leaders, that's kind of helping bridge those some of those gaps that at least I've experienced in our industry.
Well, thank you for your service, Jesse. I didn't know you were in the military, so happy
No, I just called
Veterans
on them.
Day.
I'm not that cool. I just sold
Oh, okay. I
products.
thought you
Yeah.
were in the military. You called on
No,
the military accounts.
I
Got
just
it. Got
yeah,
it.
I sold them booze, that's all. There is fun.
Oh,
It's a
no,
great
but that's,
experience.
yeah, but, well, you bring up a good point about the barriers to entry, right? And the barriers of growth. That's a big thing that, um, because the pressure in sales, especially in this industry and
Yeah.
the highly competitive nature, um, these are the things that could be barriers to advancement. And and also there's many other barriers, right? And a lot of advancement is that a lot of when we talk about diverse candidates, not they may not have had the experience to run a P&L, to manage a P&L, to manage budgets and other things. These are things that we do have those conversations and also try to provide educational outlets for our members because they are some barriers that could prevent from getting promoted and also from getting hired. But yeah, the industry has uh, been changing over the last 10 years dramatically from when I started 20 years ago. There's more and more consolidation that's
Yeah.
happening and mergers and acquisitions. So, really, to your point, right, is how to stay current and how to make sure. And there's a lot of turnover. So, even like myself, I had all these contacts with certain buyers and now they're gone or in other departments. And I'm like, oh no, there's a lot of movement.
Mhm.
Yeah, it could be challenging.
Yeah, for sure. So, have what are some of the key mentors or any kind of resources or anything that you want to talk about that kind of helped you with this transition and kind of helped you build these two different platforms?
I think the most important thing has been the the women that have trailblazed before.
Mhm.
I want to say like the Maggie Enriquez from Krug and Cynthia Lohr from J. Lohr and Beatrice Cointreau and oh my God, I could just name so many of them. Um, the Marilisa Allegrinis and Chiara Soldatis and Laura Catena, they have been, I think, some of the most encouraging um, role models for me, because they were trailblazing at a time that nobody was really, supporting them. They were paving the way. And
Yeah.
the Cara Sheltons, the Mary Edwards, and the pioneers of our industry, and the Gina Gallows. So I feel like, for me, it's really those that had to pave the way that we could be what we're doing today, and that has been the most incredible thing for me, is to get to, I've, like yourself, I've had the pleasure of meeting them, and hearing about their background and what they're doing. And I just feel, in a sense, that what motivates me and keeps me learning is, wanting to make sure that the hard work uh, is going to make a difference for the next generations.
Absolutely.
And that I think is really the key, is to pave, you know, the desire to make the industry more diverse, more equitable, more inclusive, um, is really, you know, it's a business imperative because our consumer is, but it's also going to be the succession for the future, because we have to um, entice the younger generations to see how amazing this industry is.
Yeah, that's super important to, and a lot of these women, and there's some of them I know, some of them I don't. I'm so appreciative of all their efforts and what they've done, because they've kind of set the ground and set us up for where we were at. And then you you had this book that just created this momentum right behind them, and it just kind of grew into something that um kind of just, it all kind of came together, and then you were able to put together this fabulous event, and then it was just a done deal, like right then and there. I bet the energy of that first event is like none other than that one. I mean, just because it's so unique and it was the first one, it was so um aha, right?
Yeah,
I just can't imagine what it was like to be there. I bet it was really inspiring and um educational as well.
absolutely. And every year, until the pandemic hit, it was growing, and it was the excitement. We have been virtual for the last 3 years, but I am excited that March 4th through 6th, 2024, we will be taking our virtual Women in the Vine Global Connect conference and bringing it back to being live. So,
Yay!
in San Diego, yes. So, and regional events are starting to happen again. It's been, uh, we can't wait to get back out and be in person with our community. But I do have to say that during the pandemic, some of the best ways to get through a crisis is through community. So extremely grateful that our corporate members were backing us. And we know that things are tough. Right
Mm-hmm.
now there's supply chain issues again, there's inflation again. And what we really are working hard is to, ensure that we're supporting our corporate members and employees, that diversity and equity and inclusion and community is something that actually can help you get through some of the difficult times, when it seems like you need to, focus on other areas. So, there's challenges, Jesse, things that we're doing, because at the end of the day, our members, they have to sell their product,
Right.
and there's a lot happening right now in the world. Um, but I think the beauty is that with the organization and with Diverse Power Brands and Women in the Vine and Spirits, is the fact that we have a community culture and a workplace culture, which is collaboration, sharing, and really supporting. And I think that's, like I said, taking your competitive hat off for the greater good. And I think it's a breath of fresh air when our members can come and do that, because most of the day they're in a competitive environment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we've kind of talked about a few pain points in our industry, but when it comes to, your pain points and what you're seeing, do you have anything that you'd want to share with the audience?
Um, I think for women of the vine and spirits, as our DEI focus, I really feel for that is, you know, just wanting to get more companies to join us and get involved. Because I think one of the pain points is that, and I hear it from senior leaders, is the when the pace is very slow, and they'd like to accelerate the pace. So the more of us that can get involved, the more we can look at ways of how do we accelerate that pace, because, even studies have shown we can't wait 100 years.
Right.
We gotta
Time is
move on
now.
this now. Yeah. So I think the more we could get together, we're stronger together. I think that's the biggest thing is and then now that everybody that I've spoken to thinks, okay, we've done a lot of DEI practitioner work where we've changed the interview process, we change how we're getting candidates, we're doing that, but then we're still losing them. They're not retaining. So I think now we're ready to take our work into the next phase, which is company culture, industry culture, right? Let's
Yeah.
now address the culture, because that's what's going to change for people to feel included and to retain them, not just to recruit them. So I think that's a big of our next step of really getting people to say, have you done a deep dive? You're doing great things with unconscious bias and resumes, but what about now what's happening internally for retention? And I think the other pain point is for diverse suppliers to get visibility, because it's so competitive. And that's where Diverse Power Brands is really to help supplier diversity programs and buyers to identify and explore brands that are diverse, whether it's BIPOC, LGBTQI plus, women, disabled, veteran, because it's something that currently the socially conscious consumer is looking for. And we want to create a centralized, we've created a centralized
Right.
B2B digital catalog to easily find them. So I think that's the next step of the work that we're doing, is the E in equity. And then,
So
of course, our foundation, which we just awarded scholarships, which,
nice.
Everybody, and thank you to all of our donors, because that's the E in equity. Not everybody has the financial ability to, continue education for their career paths.
So how can you walk us through the different tiers of your diverse Power Brands platform and how different people can get involved and access it? Like if I'm a restaurateur or if I'm a distributor or if I'm a brand.
No, thank you for asking. So, Diverse Power Brands is a centralized B2B, global digital catalog. What that means is that the benefit to the supplier is that the supplier pays an annual subscription fee, just like a marketing, fee based on their production volume, starting at $500 a year. So even the
Wow.
smallest emerging brands makes it affordable, and then it caps at the largest. It's designed for diverse owned, diverse led, and diverse made across the entire Bev Out category. Suppliers, what they're getting for this subscription is the ownership of their company and brand story and pages, which they can maintain 24/7. And that means every wholesaler and every buyer anywhere in the world is seeing the brand story that they want to be told. That's the hardest thing, right? In the 3-tier system, is that it's hard for the suppliers to make sure their unique brand story and unique brand differentiators are getting out to the wholesalers and buyers. So this is the first of its kind to be able to do something like that. And then it's a hybrid sales tool for wholesalers. And for buyers, if you qualify as a buyer on or off premise retail, then you can request access. So if you go to diversepoweredbrands.com, that's where you'll be able. And we're onboarding more and more suppliers every day. We just finished a pitch day with Target.
Hmm.
They just selected 7 diverse brands for their spring 2024 set.
Nice.
So we're really excited about working with supplier diversity procurement and kind of closing that gap in the bridge between bev out buyers and supplier diversity with diverse power brands.
That is really powerful and really, really, really smart. And wow, that's really affordable, $500. And then you're getting them access to people like Target is an incredible
Yeah.
platform. I mean,
So basically, if you're
wow.
between 1 in 1,000 cases, you're paying that a year, and then it goes up to like 950 and 12. Because the whole idea of the equity, pricing model is that some of the larger brands will be offsetting for smaller brands to be able to make it more affordable. And then when that smaller brand becomes bigger, they'll pay more and help offset for the next ones to come in. So it's a and we'll be onboarding wholesalers in January, but it's open to suppliers and buyers right now, and we are currently working with a lot of wholesalers now in just getting all of the systems set up so it will take the buyers and the salespeople right to the wholesalers e-commerce platform, and all of the processing and orders will take place compliantly 3-tier through each wholesaler's sales platform.
Interesting. Okay. That's pretty slick.
So I got to play with my tech stuff again,
Yes,
Jesse.
there
This
you
was so
go.
fun for me. It was like I got to bring my background, and I've been, I self-funded the project. I hired a systems architect, engineer, and creative director and programmers that work for him. And it's been super fun to be working with tech stuff again. It was like getting to bring both my worlds to collide together and bring a tech platform to market. And yeah, so we're live, up and running. We officially launched this past April at Access Live, and um, development continues. We'll be releasing more and more features as we go.
Will this be where if I'm a restaurateur or if I manage chain restaurants, I mean, I guess that would kind of be considered a buyer at that level, but will they be able to go in and look and see what's available? And how does that work if I have a couple of restaurants in the state of Florida, um, one brand's gonna have to be, I guess, connected to one wholesaler. I guess I'm confused on how does that all work? Are
So
you helping with those relationships with the brand with the wholesalers to pick up the brands?
So good question, Jesse. So two things. If you're a buyer that, brand manager, I'm sorry, buyer, bar manager, on or off premise, if you have a single unit or multi-unit or chain, you can simply go to Diverse Power Brands where it says, a buyer access, or if you're a supplier diversity procurement manager, so you may work for like a Costco or a Walmart or Target that's supplier diversity, you can request access. We ask some questions to make sure, we that preserve the integrity that you are who you are,
Right.
and then you can have access to explore the catalog to discover and learn about these products. For
Very
each one
cool.
of those brand pages, the supplier has their wholesaler. So if you're with any wholesaler or self-distributed, all of that will be on your brand pages. And we do have a demo that you can watch, a demo on the website as well. We do have a section in the brand portfolio that says I'm I'm distributed in Florida, but I'm also seeking distribution in Ohio or Illinois or whatever. And that is because if wholesalers are looking as well to explore brands, they'll see which brands are looking for new markets. So it really is connecting the whole three tiers. So
Wow.
we have suppliers that are seeking wholesalers. So like when we did the Target pitch day, Target actually utilized diverse power brands to discover, research, and select. They selected companies. 13 companies, diverse power brands invited to Minneapolis in June,
Oh,
and they
wow.
got to pitch in person. And out of that in person pitch, Target just selected 7 for their spring set, and they're women owned, black owned, and AAPI. So we couldn't be more thrilled of our first
Yay.
time out of success, and we just launched in April. So that definitely, and I have to say that one of the women owned brands, because we did have RNDC Southern and Johnson Brothers at the pitch day with us, they just got picked up by RNDC. They're just finalizing contracts. So talk about like helping to make those connections.
That
Um, and this was just, the start. This is where wholesalers, they have to be discretionary of what they're bringing on with new products, but they got to
Yep.
explore using diverse power brands. They get to meet founders. And so that's the holistic commercial side. So there's a lot of wonderful incubators out there and programs that, are doing great work. What we're trying to do is now give the gateway to the commercial strategy. So we don't incubate, we don't invest money, what we're trying to do is bridge the gap of the wholesalers and the buyers to be able to find. Most of them would not know that these brands have veterans behind them, or LGBTQI plus,
right.
or disabled. And it's not easy for in one stop shopping all under one platform to discover them and their brand stories and their founder stories. So and that's what diverse power brands, so Women in the Vine and Spirits filled a void where the industry needed a forum for conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, business development, and we're so pleased we were able to create that. Now diverse power brands is filling a void where supplier diversity procurement have big goals that their companies have set for them to spend, and bev out buyers are trying to find brands that are going to resonate with their diverse customers. And we think this will help our wholesalers, um, because as a trusted resource, we're doing the heavy lift, and that allows the wholesalers to do what they do best. So we're excited to see as we go into 2024. This will be our first full year in business.
Wow. That is really incredible and much needed. And, and we've talked on this podcast several times about, the challenges that these smaller brands face trying to get distribution. I mean, you look at the RNDCs and the Southerns, and they're a national presence. They're a bigger kind of a bigger brand, if you will, kind of a powerhouse, a turnkey operation. And it's really hard for these smaller brands to try to get attention. I've done it. I've been through it. I've tried,
Yep,
importing. It's really, really hard, and to get that time in front of them. And so this kind of puts you out there already in front of them with your story.
absolutely. And to your point, Jesse, we work with MHW, we work with LibDib. We're thrilled to see that there's other three-tier compliant ways to get brands to market,
Great. That's
because
fantastic.
um, and then of course smaller wholesalers as well, right? There are a
Hmm.
lot of small wholesalers that we want to work with, and there's also diverse owned wholesalers that are small, that are out there, that are women owned or minority owned. So yeah, we also think this is a going to help educate smaller brands that there's other three-tier compliant ways to get to market, and then utilize diverse power brands as a way to get visibility that you normally wouldn't be able to get.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. If I was selling my brand again, I easily could walk in. If I was a supplier and I was on Diverse Power Brands, I could walk into any of my local on or off premise and say, how about we build a diverse program together? How about dedicating a shelf space that you can have my brand and look at all these other diverse brands in Diverse Power Brands, and that's going to help me sell my brand because I'm going to be amongst the shelf. Or maybe
Right.
we create a cool wine list or a cocktail menu that has, all diversities and things. That's my vision, right? And so I want the suppliers, don't just think that it's going to go through wholesaler or buyer. Use it also as your selling tool. Walk in and help some of your smaller on and off premise create unique offerings that's going to separate them from, the wine sales in grocery or your big chain, because a lot of the small mom and pop, you know, um, wine and spirit shops have incredible following. And
Right.
now they can offer something unique to their customers, or your restaurants can offer, or if you know that you have a VFW down the street, go in and show them all your veteran owned
Absolutely.
brands.
I love that.
So that's how I envision Diverse Power Brands. I want it. It's a sales and marketing tool
Yep.
that never existed in BevOut before.
No, 100%. Well said. I know you have to go. I do have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll email them to you if you want to respond. I can just kind of talk about it at the end of the podcast. But
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to.
thank you so much, Deborah, for taking the time. I know, it's busy season for us, and I just really appreciate it. Happy holidays to you and your family and friends, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Happy holidays too. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast, and I'll be more than happy to answer anything else and hopefully come back on someday soon.
I feel like we
Thank
didn't
you.
even get halfway through so much. There's so much
We're
to
gonna have
talk
to do
about.
another one. Yeah.
Yes, we'll
Thank you,
see you in
Jesse. I really
2024 then.
appreciate it. You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next Thursday, I'm speaking with Todd Bellamy, founder and brewer at Farther Star Sake, based in Medfield, Massachusetts, located in the Boston area. Todd has spent a great deal of time in Japan where his love for sake began. He was a sword-making apprentice turned intern at Asahi Shuzo Sake Brewing Company before working for Boston Beer Company for 8 years. He then jumped over to sake again in 2014 and has never looked back. He now owns a warehouse where he brews 2 types of sake and serves them at the tap room. In a strange land, their flagship Junmai sake is made with Yamada Nishiki, rice grown by Isbell Farms in Arkansas. It has fruit flavors and a peppery, medium dry finish. Mountains on the Moon, the flagship Nagori or unfiltered sake, is made from the same rice and is fruity and sweet with clean acidity. I love learning about sake in the new world of sake brewers outside of Japan, and Todd, well, he knows many of them. I'll be leaning in on sake next year, and I look forward to building my relationship with Todd and beyond. Kanpai! Tune in next Thursday and have a great week. This week's episode was produced by Fedora J Productions.